operators of the Department of State Services after days of tension over his stalled bail and a security siege at the Kuje Correctional Facility. Well, you do know that DSS had maintained a blockade around the prison since Malami was granted bail, preventing his release despite his compliance with bail conditions. Although legally entitled to freedom, Malami remained confined in Kuje prison, turning what should have been a routine administrative process into a high-profile standoff. The situation escalated last Friday when Malami's son was arrested while allegedly attempting to leave the prison premises amidst a clampdown, a move seen as tightening state control rather than easing it. Today being Monday, Malami finally surrendered to the DSS 1 week after his bail was stalled and just hours after activist Omoyele Sowore publicly announced plans to visit Kuje prison to intervene and help secure his release. Well, Kuje prison was placed under tight security with more than 50 DSS operators deployed to strategic positions around the facility. Preemptive move to ensure Malami being held at the facility does not escape an investigation into terrorism-related activities, especially after he was granted bail by the Federal High Court in Abuja in his 8.7 billion naira money laundering case. The incident occurred on Friday when court bailiffs from the Federal High Court arrived at the prison with fully processed bail documents to secure Abdelaziz's release. Now, there was tension in some motor parks within Oshogbo metropolis on Sunday following the reported killing of a former unit chairman of National Union of Road Transport Workers, Kazeem Oyewole, in Oshogbo by some yet-to-be-identified hoodlums. After the killing, which reportedly occurred in the afternoon, some people believed to be friends of the deceased, who served as a part-time chairman of Aregbe unit between 2018 and 2022, moved around some major motor parks in Oshogbo searching for those allegedly involved in the death of Oyewole. However, it is not immediately clear how the deceased was killed, but a resident who watched from a safe distance, however preferred anonymity for safety reasons, said that some hoodlums had set up a base around Elelede Junction and were collecting money from passers-by under the guise of raising funds for a proposed carnival. Also speaking on the incident, a shop owner at Elelede Junction, identified simply as Basira, said few businesses that opened for operations in the area hurriedly shut down when the crisis started. People around the scene also made mention of observing some fracas within that particular unit where the convergence took place. Hoodlums forced two passengers to disembark. They started fighting the passengers. Gunshots were heard. Later, it was discovered that two persons were attacked and one of the persons killed was Kazim. Monitoring security situation at the old garage and Aregbe Motor Park on Sunday evening, observation made was that people avoided staying close to the parks for fear of being caught in the crisis, while presence of hoodlums was also observed close to the park. Now, powerful forces within the Lagos All Progressives Congress are reportedly working behind the scenes to halt any attempt by Sheikh Tinubu, son of the president, to contest the Lagos governorship elections in 2027, insisting that such a move would be politically dangerous and publicly unacceptable. The Governor's Advisory Council, the influential 30-member decision-making bloc of the Lagos APC, has resolved that Sheikh Tinubu should wait until 2031 before pursuing any governorship ambition. The body is said to be worried about the optics and backlash of a scenario where Tinubu remains president while his son governs Lagos, a development insiders fear would fuel accusations of dynastic rule and further inflame opposition sentiment. Party sources disclose that Sheikh Tinubu, aged 40, has instead been advised to concentrate on mobilizing youth, diaspora networks and grassroots structures in support of the president, especially for his 2027 return, while keeping personal political ambitions in check to avoid becoming a liability to the administration. In what appears to be a strategic alternative, the GAC power brokers are also reportedly considering a political comeback for former Governor Akinwumi Ambode, who served between 2015 and 2019 before losing the APC ticket to Babajide Sanwo-Olu in a controversial primary. The plan, insiders say, is to present Ambode as a bridge candidate in 2027, a move that would restore political balance, address zoning grievances, and buy time ahead of a possible Sheyi Tinubu run in 2031. Ambode's name has been gaining traction largely because Ekpe Division, his home base, remains the only Ibile zone, Ikorodu, Badagry, Ikeja, Lagos Island, and Ekpe yet to enjoy a full 8-year governorship tenure since 1999. Musa Bakare, the interior initiator and convener of the Atiku Haske organization, has dismissed Abba Atiku Abubakar from the group for defecting to the All Progressives Congress. On Thursday, Abba, a son of Atiku Abubakar, former vice president and People's Democratic Party presidential candidate in the 2019 and 2023 elections, defected to the All Progressives Congress. After his defection, Abba directed coordinators and members of his political structure to join the party and mobilize support for President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. However, let's take a very brief listen to Atiku Abubakar's son while disclosing the reason why he's moving or defecting to the All Progressives Congress.
I'm here today with my coordinators from the organization that I founded back in 2022, I believe. We started this organization in 2022 to be able to work for His Excellency, my father, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. I think I'm a bit excited to be here with all of you. This is a very key time in the history of our country. 2022, I believe. We started this organization in 2022 to be able to work for His Excellency, my father, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. I think I'm a bit excited to be here with all of you. This is a very key time in the history of our country, where you have incredible leaders like His Excellency Senator Barao Jibrin here. So today I'm formally here to announce my exit from my former party, where we worked in 2023, and to the APC. With this development, I will work with His Excellency Senator Barao to actualize the second term
to issue directives on which party or candidate it should actually support. The Haske organization is not a party to, neither is it interested in joining ABBA to defect to any other political party apart from the African Democratic Congress. Bakri said the group was formerly part of the PDP and resolved to move en masse to the ADC. In a very recent development, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is currently meeting with the Kano State Governor Abba Yusuf. The meeting is taking place in the President's office at the Presidential Villa. You'd recall very recently that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had actually said he wanted to meet Abba Kabir Yusuf and asked for e-registration exercises into the APC in Kano State to be aborted for now up until there is an official unveiling. Kabir Yusuf is seeking for an automatic ticket within the All Progressives Congress and some members in his cabinet to be re-elected or given some positions in the House of Representatives ahead of 2027. Meanwhile, a former Minister of State for Education and two-time member of the House of Representatives, Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, has formally declared his intention to contest the 2027 presidential election on the platform of the African Democratic Congress. Well, Nwajuba, a seasoned lawyer and former chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, said his decision to seek the nation's highest office was driven by the need for a shift towards competence-based leadership in the country. Speaking on his ambition, the former minister stressed that Nigeria's growing socio-economic and political challenges requires leaders with deep policy understanding, negotiation skills, and the capacity to build effective grassroots political structures. According to him, rhetoric without substance has failed to address the country's problems over the years. Now, concerning insecurity in Nigeria, and House of Rep member Riley Moore speaking on it, let's take a listen to more talks by the House of Rep members disclosing that insecurity in Nigeria cannot continue like this. There are foreign lobbyists who are reacting to the president's regime concerning bribery, the $9 million lobbying payout, including Riley Moore saying that this situation or scenario can no longer continue as I think of a way to ensure that Christians in Nigeria can no longer continue to be threatened or live in fear. Let's take a listen to him.
General Musa, Talking to Minister Musa, former General Musa, and he was asking, well, what does tomorrow look like? And I indicated to him that we would be actually going to a church service, a Christian Reformed church service, and the head of the Christian Reformed Church, Nigeria, Reverend Magaji, has become a good friend, and he and I had never met in person, but we had met a number of times over Zoom. And we were going to the church, and Minister Musa said, where is it, and what's the name of it, and I may join you. Well, sure enough, he came. And I felt like that was a bit of a turning point. I hope it was a turning point. He ended up doing a number of interviews after the church service as well, where he reinforced this notion of this not just being hooligans and people that were out. He was calling them out with ill intent. He was calling them terrorists. And I think that's the appropriate language to be using. And no doubt, Nigeria is extremely complicated. There's a number of factors. I keep getting asked by the media, but this isn't just about religion. As I actually said to a reporter yesterday, I said, could you tell me what conflict in the world is only about religion? Right? It's about power. It is about money. It's about a number of things that always are happening there. But I think some of my colleagues are denying the flip side of the coin when they say, well, this is just about herdsmen and property owners and conflict. Well, they are missing the other side of that coin, which is the religious motivation behind oftentimes those actions. And we have to acknowledge that. They haven't seemed to have been able to acknowledge that. I hope that they're able to come along and understand that and be able to acknowledge that. But you know, we saw the strike happen on Christmas Day. I kind of wondered to myself if they would have maybe delayed it a little bit because we were in country. I'm glad we didn't find out. But we still saw, however, attacks afterwards. And we know that this has not been fixed. Now, I'm not anticipating that this is a just flip a switch kind of moment, but we have to see a commitment, not just words, out of the Tinubu government. We have to see actions. As part of our meetings that we had there, we met with the governor of Plateau State as well, and heard his perspective about some legislative actions that were going on, about the debate about whether states should have their own police force as well versus just relying on a national police force that oftentimes isn't as responsive as it needs to be. The debate about whether others besides the Fulani who should be able to have weapons for self-defense.
All right, that's a U.S. House of Rep member speaking on the recent developments, specifically as to what the real origin of insecurity is, not necessarily based on security, but actually for the absolute attainment of power. Meanwhile, the former Minister of Aviation, Femi Fani-Kayode, has dismissed a report by the New York Times suggesting that the United States airstrike carried out in Sokoto State were based on an intelligence report of a civilian, actually resident in southeast Nigeria, Onitsha to be precise. He argued that it is impossible for the United States to carry out such a mission based on the intelligence report of just one individual. Speaking via X, he asserted that such an action could only have been taken based on intelligence supplied through formal collaboration between U.S. and Nigerian security agencies. He described the newspaper's account as misleading and damaging, accusing it of attempting to undermine the credibility of both the Nigerian and U.S. governments and their intelligence gathering capabilities. He says, and I read, anyone who honestly believes that the U.S. government based its intelligence to bomb parts of Sokoto State on the intel supplied by an Onitsha-based screwdriver seller who used Google to source his information and not on the intel supplied by the Nigerian intelligence services must have a low IQ, low self-esteem, and a low intelligence quotient. I respectfully urge such a person to get sense. The false and mischievous narrative which has been purposely put out by the New York Times to belittle, demean, embarrass, and debase both the Nigerian and the U.S. governments and their intelligence gathering capabilities is puerile and childish. No country will allow its country to be bombed in the name of fighting ISIS or anyone else, on the words of an Onisha utensil trader, and neither would the Americans take such a precipitous and consequential course of action, on the words of such an individual. You're currently listening to the World News right here on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. We'll take a very short break. When we return, we'll head into our news analysis segment where I'll be joined via the telephone with Barrister Fred Nzako, who is a political, national and social affairs commentator. Barrister Fred Nzako will be giving us some insights into some of the stories read out on the World News at 6. To kind of stay with us. And thank you for staying with us today. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the World News. Barrister Fred Nzako, let's start off with the obvious that transpired during the weekend. I wanted to ask this question, Barrister. The situation of insecurity has been on for almost 12, 13 years thereabout. The PDP, both the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress, have been going through this unfortunate circumstance. And insecurity has morphed into different terror cells, and they have actually been able to adopt different capacities through which they carry out their heinous activity, specifically land grabbing, forceful conversion, and literally murder, in some regions in Nigeria. Just yesterday evening or on Saturday, we saw a report by the New York Times, which was first of all released by the cable. We discussed it on the political spotlight yesterday, where they simply hinged the supposed decision by the United States of America on an individual based in Onitsha, whom they supposedly wanted to sound derogatory by terming him as a simple screwdriver seller, who obviously is his report, a secondary report that the U.S. based its intel on before they carry out the December 25, 2025 Christmas Day bombing. How do you see that kind of report, this kind of situation? Do you think it undermines Nigeria and the United States of America?
We have to say it the way it is, and we have been saying it. That this insecurity situation in Nigeria, especially since 2014, has been as a result of lack of political will to fight insecurity, especially because of political interest, especially because of some primordial interests that have nothing to do with the welfare of Nigeria. And that is why the government has been variously accused of not only fueling it or financing it in some cases through some officials of government, or looking the other way as if it doesn't matter, as if the government benefits from the situation. It defies all logic and defies all reasonable argument. America had come to save Nigeria from the hands of terrorists. The same terrorists that the government said under Buhari's regime that they are not Nigerian, that they are not Fulani headsmen, that they are from other parts of West Africa because of their porous borders. And America had now come to drive them away. The same government started protecting them by trying to even bribe America to give them a loan. Now, anybody who begins to tribalize or ethnicize the insecurity in Nigeria, in this country, any good, how can anybody begin to reason that America that can gather any information from any part of the, both under the earth and on top of the earth. But America will be relying on a so-called intel or a so-called advice or a so-called report by one casual fellow in the southeast. This simply tells you that Nigeria as a country, especially those in authority, don't understand what the people are going through. Everything is politics for politicians. Now you are talking about Southeast. Oh, it is IPOP that they are trying to tell America to come. Oh, Biafran, they want to use America to come as Biafra and secede. Oh, all of craps and nonsensical narratives coming from quarters that don't love Nigeria. The simple fact is that America even knows Nigeria more than Nigeria knows herself. American officials, top officials of America, know this country more than top officials of Nigeria know Nigeria, because they will look at the truth, they will look at the reality, devoid of sentiment, devoid of nepotism, and devoid of unnecessary politicking. So anything that they do is based on their own intel, based on their own conviction, and based on what they know, and not based on one narrative by the corner.
Barrister Fred Nzako.
Being spewed by people who don't mean well for this country.
Barrister, there are so many research on the killings in Nigeria, way back from the administration of late Musa Yar'Adua. All right, even during the administration of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. One of such persons who has written such a lengthy article.
The tempo, the dynamics, and the crescendo increased with the government of Muhammad Buhari.
Okay.
I have not seen it up to today.
Barrister, what I'm saying is that Professor Joash Amukwiton, the current INEC chair, wrote on it. In March 2025, Bishop Anagbe went to the UK. There was a parliament set up. He presented pictorial evidence of the cleansing going on in Benue State. That's not the only time we've seen report. Bishop Matthew Kuka himself, during the administration of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, wrote and made utterances and statements that actually gives credibility to the killings in Nigeria. So why does it seem like there is a deliberate attempt to cover up the obvious or twist the narrative that insecurity is not prevalent in the country?
Yes, it is not the only thing that is deliberately being covered up. The problem with Nigerian environment is that there is so much propaganda and half-truth. There is so much lies and people don't say the truth. And what is the population of Nigeria?
It's 200 and something million. More than that now.
Estimated by the United Nations and by the World Bank. We have not been able to conduct a credible population census. What is the quantity of crude oil that we produce in this country? We don't know. How much is our foreign debt and our foreign reserve? We don't know. Everything is estimated. Everything in Nigeria is estimated. Simply because people shy away from the truth. People, especially people in government, shy away from the truth. As if they are anticipating that somehow, somewhere, sometime, it will be to their political benefit. And that is why everything is either swept under the carpet or covered with something that will not allow the truth to surface. And that is why the issue about insecurity, just like every other issue around Nigeria, is surrounded in propaganda and lies and half-truth. And as long as you don't confront problems and challenges with reality, you cannot solve them. And that is the problem that we have. That is just the problem that we have. Until we tell ourselves the whole truth about issues, that's where we begin to solve issues in this country.
It's actually on record that U.S. President Donald Trump has actually had filed a $15 billion defamation lawsuit against the same New York Times that released this particular report. You know, there are talks that the New York Times are part of those who are the leftist, who do not actually support what the United States President's administration, and there are also several talks that obviously some of the supporters, their media, could use anything to supposedly, erase some of the efforts of Trump's administration. Meanwhile, House of Rep member Riley Moore has not receded in his call concerning the Christian genocide in Nigeria, although he has admitted that it cut across front. But they're talking about a situation where there could be a split in Nigeria into 6 geographical zones. Is it possible for the U.S. to initiate that process of dividing Nigeria into 6 geopolitical zones?
Let's not forget that the U.S. officials had long predicted that Nigeria could break in 2014. It became an issue. It became a very, very serious issue within and outside Nigeria. Nigeria survived it. We had an election in 2015. And why they were saying so, it was after the election that Nigeria started understanding why they had that, they made that statement. It is because while the PDP was preparing for election, the then APC was preparing for war. And it was on account of that that President Jonathan immediately surrendered power. Even when he did not consult his party, he did not consult his family, he did not consult his allies, he consulted nobody because he saw what was coming. And if he did not surrender power to Muhammad Buhari, Nigeria would never remain the same. And America possibly did not believe that an African president would surrender power the way President Jonathan surrendered. So that prediction, if you could call it the prediction, would have come to pass in 2014. Now Nigeria glided through it, and today the problems and the challenges have not only ceased, but have not ceased, rather they are increasing in momentum, and they are increasing in dimensions and in problematic challenges. If I tell you that we have continued to say in our movement for Nigeria restructuring that Nigeria has 2 major options, 2 main options to continue to make progress. Option number 1 is to restructure this country along the lines of true fiscal federalism. We have the template. We have 6 geopolitical zones that are not recognized by the Constitution, but are recognized administratively, and everything we do in the country is based and anchored on these 6 geopolitical zones. You now ask, why can we not incorporate these zones in our administrative structure so that Nigeria will be better managed and better run as a restructured polity? The second alternative that Nigeria has is a very terrible one. I don't want to mention it.
And what's that, Barrister? What's a terrible one?
I don't want to mention it because that is where Nigeria is drifting towards. Let us remain with the first option, which is a human, sensible option. The other alternative is mind-boggling and unimaginable. Mind-boggling and unimaginable. And that is why we continue to preach, we continue to advocate that we should minimize our level of personal greed and personal interest. Let us think this country, and the best way to think this country is to restore to Nigeria. Every geopolitical zone can stand as an administrative zone, can stand as an administrative center, can stand as a major component of the country whereby each zone will now develop and grow along the line of fairly fair competition, along the international best practices as you practice in other parts of the world. Many countries in Europe are not as big as one single zone in this country in terms of landmass, in terms of population, in terms of natural resources. So why are we not telling ourselves the one truth? Why are we not telling ourselves the truth? And like the Americans have predicted, if we don't restructure this country, Esther, along the lines of true fiscal federalism, the worst alternative, which is the terrible devil's alternative, may be devil Nigeria. And we can only say God forbid, but as human beings, we have a responsibility and a role to play to ensure that Nigeria remains a country.
Well, Barrister, as it stands, it's unfortunate that the supposed accusation about a Christian genocide, this terrorists keep amplifying by creating or giving more evidence and clearance to it. Just yesterday, gunmen abducted over 100 worshippers in 3 different Kaduna churches. This is basically the description that has been going around concerning the Christian genocide, and more than 100 of them, they went to 3 different Christian churches in Kaduna. Obviously, obviously to be in southern Kaduna, and they kidnapped these people. We don't know precisely what will happen within their enclaves where they have carried them out onto. We're still waiting for the military to give us an information if they have begun a manhunt or if there'll be a negotiation to release these victims. They were said to be kidnapped during Sunday services in Kurumin Wali community, Kajuru, local government area of the state, inside the church in broad daylight. So if anyone is trying to make it seem as if some persons are trying to tarnish Nigeria or create a breakup of Nigeria, what does this evidence actually prove if it's the report we keep on hearing all the time in the news?
The fact and the problem is that instead of addressing the main issue, Nigeria prefers, officials of Nigerian government prefer to live in denial. And instead of addressing the main issue, they prefer to even go to spend huge amount of money to lobby countries that already know Nigeria, especially the United States. To lobby the United States to present an impression as if what is going on with the sea on a daily basis, reported not only in local media but also in international media. That what they see is not what is happening, which of course is someone deceiving himself. The biggest deceit one can give to himself is seeing the truth and preferring to accept the lies. The truth is that there is still attack on Christian community. There is still attack in churches. Yes, there are random attacks in non-Christian communities and in places that are not churches. But does it take away the fact that there is Christian genocide? It does not. And what it should do happen is that we should say it the way it is, and then begin to work out solution. Begin to work out solution. Living in propaganda and lies and living in denial, of course, it will tie your hands from looking for solution. Government says there was no Christian genocide. Yes, the same government is spending more and lobby America for them to understand that they are now putting measures in place to protect Christians. I mean, that is approbation and reprobation at the same time. That is speaking from both sides of one's mouth, and that is not the reality the way it is. The reality is that the jihadists in Nigeria are continuously trying to achieve their purpose. They don't mince words about it. They are not ambiguous. They are direct. They are acting out the script, and they really mean it. What is left for the country as a secular country is to stop them and agree to the fact that they exist and that they mean business. When you agree to that, then you can now get help from any part of the world. But when you don't want to agree to the truth, instead you rebrand terrorists as bandits and then try to deny the fact that there's a genocide, how are you going to get help from any part of the world? And that is the major challenge that Nigeria has. Even locally, the efforts of the military and the security agencies are being undermined by agents of destabilization who don't want to accept the truth.
All right, Barrister.
That is it.
All
so
right.
the very best thing we keep advocating is that let this country be restructured so that everybody will be able to not only grow but secure your environment.
Well, there are expectations that
the central security has not achieved the milestone expected by the citizens.
There were expectations that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu would have started that process. There were talks that he understood the necessity for restructuring, but maybe there are issues that he has seen while he went to Aso Rock that could not allow him expedite that process. Barrister, let's go into the political scene where the Speaker of the Borno State House of Assembly, Abdul Karim Lawan, has protested the exclusion of Vice President Kashim Shettima's picture from a banner displaying party leaders at an All Progressives Congress event in Maiduguri. So it was an event. The venue was a Northeast Zonal public hearing on the amendment of the APC constitution. It featured the image of the president, 5 APC governors from the Northeast Northeast and the party's national legal advisor, but conspicuously left out the vice president. So Lawan described the omission as unfair and provocative, particularly as the meeting was held in Shetima's home state. Is it possible that Shetima himself knows that he will not be running with the president in 2027? We have heard that the president actually had alternatives from the northern region, and one of such persons is Nuhu Ribadu, the current national security advisor, and another former governor, in Borno State, who obviously was a Muslim from the Muslim religion extraction. But now, with the U.S. pressure, there are talks that certain individuals are being talked about. One of them is Reverend Matthew Kuka, also the current Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa. These two individuals are being considered to be vice for 2027. Do you think this will cause an imbroglio within the APC as they are gearing up ahead of 2027?
I don't think this is the first time that similar occurrence is happening, especially in the north. You remember that APC had their convention sometime. I think it was a convention. It was a NEC meeting.
Yeah.
And in Yobe sometime, and they endorsed the Bola Tinubu for second term, and refused to endorse Kashim Shettima. When the folks around Kashim Shettima raised voices against such sidelining of Shettima, the then chairman Lajuma Ganduje told them that they didn't need to endorse the vice president, that Mr. President will decide, because at the party primaries it is only the presidential ticket that is contested for. Then whoever that won that ticket, with the ticket, will now nominate the vice, the running mate. And it raised a lot of brouhaha. They almost beat up Ganduje. He ran away. They thought his father for their life, because the elements that we are in favor of Shetima's mentioning, we are very, very disappointed. Now it has happened again in Borno State. It is not a hidden fact that it is most likely that Atiku Shetima will not run along with their President Bola Tinubu in his election bid in 2027 for obvious reasons. One, the politics is dynamic. The politics of 2023 is no longer that of 2027. The ground has shifted. And they say in local balance that when the drummer changes the beating of the drum, the dancer changes the dancing step. The drumming has changed. The dancing step will also change. Secondly, the heat from America is one that the president and his handlers are watching very, very closely. Very, very closely. Because don't forget that America has its allies, and whenever they come together as allies, any wall they put, that wall must fall. And they don't want Nigerian wall to be put. So, whatever the gimmick that Mr. President used against the northern voters in 2023 will not likely that they have understood it. They have regretted their actions. Now they're waiting for. So he will want to pull out another thought. So in doing all that, by political permutation indicates that Atiku Shetima will not likely be run along with President Bola Tinubu. And all these travels that Mr. President has been making, he has never for once transmitted power to his vice president. It is a very strong point to indicate that Mr. Vice President, who at the point was being mocked by even people like Keleno Mokre, that he was only going to communicate with people at burials and naming ceremonies on behalf of Mr. President, because Mr. President had never gave him any critical serious assignment as the Vice President. That saying that the VP is a spare tire is giving loud assertion under President Bola Tinubu's government. At least during Buhari's era, from time to time, Oshogbo had power transmitted to him. And each time power was transmitted to him, we will see he will shine as a star. And Nigerians would hope that he stayed longer before Buhari will come back.
Yeah.
Since Tinubu came to power, last year he spent about 196 or 197 days.
6 months, actually, Barrister. 6 months. He was out of the country
Nigeria
for 6 months.
In 2025,
yes.
196 or 197 days.
I thought you were referring to former President Buhari.
No, I'm talking about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu last year in 2025.
Okay.
He spent over 195 or 196 days outside Nigeria and out of the country. At no time did he ever transmit power to his vice. In 2024, he spent over 100 days outside the country. He never transmitted power. People who watch Nigerian politics and who watch the goings on in Aso Rock will simply tell you that it is a sign and a signal that Mr. Vice President is truly indeed a spare tire. And then we're not likely, the spanner with which to fight him back has been kept away until 2037.
All right, I think it will now be determined on another administration to change the course of that and follow what the Constitution dictates. All right, Barrister Fred Nzeko, thank you so much for giving us your time on the World News at 6. We sincerely do appreciate you.
Many thanks. And before I drop, Esther, it is important to say that irrespective of who Mr. President calls up as his
vice,
Nigerians are as his running mate in 2027. Nigerians are anxious to see the back of APC because 2015 to 2025 is 10 years. By 2027, APC would have spent 12 years in power. And then it is long enough for people to assess that party and take a decision on how their life will be going forward. Nigerians are suffering.
Well, Barrister, that will depend on a free and fair elections. All right, if we have a free and fair elections, then we will see how the outcome would be. Maybe the president will return, maybe not.
That's all right.
All right, Barrister, thank you so much once again.
Many thanks.
All right. And just before we go, let's take a look outside the shores of Nigeria. Donald Trump has disclosed he will 100% follow through on his threats to impose further tariffs if a deal over Greenland is not reached. The U.S. president also responds no comment when asked whether he would use force to seize the island. It comes as his messages to Norway's prime minister are released, in which he says that not being given the Nobel Peace Prize means he no longer has an obligation to think purely of peace. Greenland's prime minister says, "We will not let ourselves be pressured." The latest statements from the US, which includes threats of tariff, do not change that line. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls Trump's plan to impose tariffs on 8 countries completely wrong, while also seeming to downplay retaliatory tariffs. Over the weekend, Trump said he would impose a 10% tariff on goods from 8 NATO allies starting in February if they oppose his proposed takeover, threatening to raise it to 25% by June. And that's a wrap on the World News at 6. My name is Esther Wachko. Good evening and thank you for staying with us. Just stay with us for the evening rush at 7 o'clock.